Human waitress gave her leftovers to a quiet kid, unaware his father was a vampire king. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. It was just another typical evening at Bella's Bistro, a small but cozy restaurant tucked away in the heart of the city. The kind of place where the smells of freshly baked bread and simmering tomato sauce fill the air, and the friendly clink of glasses echoes in the background. Bella, the waitress, had been working double shifts for weeks. She was used to the grind, delivering plates of food, refilling drinks, and exchanging smiles with regular customers who always made her feel like part of the family. But today, something felt different. There was a quietness in the air, a kind of tension that Bella couldn't quite place. It was probably just the exhaustion from working so much. She had no time for anything else, no time for herself, no time to stop and rest. Bella moved with practiced ease around the tables, smiling as she served each dish, until she noticed him. A boy, no older than 10, sitting alone at the corner of the restaurant. He was quiet, almost eerily so. He wasn't eating, just staring down at the untouched plate in front of him. His clothes were neat, though a bit too big for him, and his eyes, dark as midnight, seemed far too old for his age. He didn't seem to notice the hustle and bustle around him, or the laughter from the other diners. He just sat there, lost in thought. Something tugged at Bella's heart. Maybe it was the exhaustion, maybe it was the softness she'd always had for kids, but she couldn't ignore the feeling. The boy needed something. She glanced around the room, seeing everyone else wrapped up in their own conversations, but no one was paying attention to him. Bella approached the table, trying her best to make her voice as gentle as possible. "Hey there, you okay?" The boy didn't respond right away, but his eyes flicked up to meet hers. For a moment, Bella was caught in the stillness of his gaze. There was something about him, something that seemed out of place in this world. He looked at her for a long time, his lips barely moving as he finally spoke. "I'm not hungry," he whispered, as if the words were an effort. Bella smiled softly, not wanting to push him, but also feeling the need to offer him some comfort. She took a step back, ready to move on with her shift, when an idea struck her. She was carrying a tray of leftovers, food that had been uneaten by the previous guests. Most of it would go to waste, but something about the boy made her hesitate. Bella gently set the tray down on his table. "Here," she said with a warm smile. "It's just some leftovers, but I think you could use it more than anyone else." The boy looked up at her, his eyes wide with something like surprise. Or was it curiosity? But he didn't say anything, and Bella didn't press. She simply turned to walk away, back into the kitchen, hoping she hadn't intruded. What she didn't know was that the boy's father was watching from across the room. And the man she'd just brushed off as another regular diner was no ordinary man. He was a vampire king, ancient, powerful, and very much aware of every single detail that occurred within his sight. He watched the quiet exchange between his son and the waitress, his expression unreadable. He wasn't sure why she had given his son leftovers, or why it had moved him so much. But what he did know was that something about this woman was different. He didn't know it yet, but this simple act of kindness would be the start of something much bigger than either of them could imagine. As Bella moved back to the kitchen, she couldn't shake the image of the quiet boy sitting alone at the table. She went about her work, clearing plates and taking orders, but her thoughts kept drifting back to him. There was something about his stillness that unsettled her, something that made her feel like she should do more, even though she knew there was nothing more she could do. It was just one of those feelings you couldn't explain. Little did she know that one simple act of kindness, giving her leftovers to the boy, would set off a series of events that would change her life forever. As she prepared a tray of fresh drinks, her thoughts were interrupted by a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find a man standing in front of her. He was tall, dressed in a sleek black suit that somehow seemed to blend into the shadows of the restaurant. His dark eyes were sharp, calculating, yet there was a strange, almost magnetic energy around him. "Excuse me," he said in a voice that was smooth but carried an edge. "I noticed your gesture with my son. It was appreciated." Bella froze for a moment, not sure if she had heard him correctly. "His son? I'm sorry, sir," Bella said, trying to keep her composure. I didn't mean to intrude. No. The man interrupted, his gaze never leaving her face. You did nothing wrong. In fact, I'm grateful. His words didn't quite match the intensity of his gaze, but there was something in them that made Bella's heart race. I'm Allaric, the man continued, and that was my son you spoke with. He's not like other children. Bella nodded, still unsure of where this conversation was heading. I didn't know, she said softly. I just wanted to help. He looked like he could use a friend, even if he didn't say much. Allaric's lips twitched into what might have been a smile, but it was gone before Bella could be sure. You have a good heart, he said. That's rare, especially around here. Bella blinked, her confusion deepening. She had always been kind, but this man's words didn't seem to match the situation. I don't mean to intrude, sir, but is there something I can help you with? She asked, glancing toward the door. I'm just trying to finish my shift. Allaric studied her for a moment, and for the briefest second, Bella could have sworn she saw something flicker in his eyes. A flash of recognition? It was gone as quickly as it came, leaving her with more questions than answers. I don't want to take up too much of your time, he said, his voice softening. But there's something you should know. My son, he's been ill for a long time. No one has been able to help him. Until now. Bella's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't realized how much she had been holding her breath. What do you mean? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Allaric took a step closer, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if weighing his words carefully. My son is not a normal child. He's been cursed for many years, and no healer has been able to break it. But what you did, what you gave him, no one else has ever been able to do. It's as if something inside him is finally waking up. Bella felt a chill run down her spine. She had no idea what he was talking about. Cursed? Vampire? It all sounded like something out of a fairy tale, but his serious expression made it hard to dismiss. I didn't do anything special, she said, shaking her head. I just gave him my leftovers. That's all. Allaric didn't respond immediately. He just watched her with an intensity that made Bella feel like she was being weighed, measured. You're not just a waitress, are you? He asked, his tone soft but piercing. Bella blinked, taken aback by his question. I'm just me, she said, her voice uncertain. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't, he replied, almost to himself. But you're special, Bella, and I'm beginning to think that fate has brought us together. Bella's mind raced, but before she could respond, the boy, his son, appeared at the doorway, looking up at Allaric with wide eyes. Bella couldn't help but notice the strange, almost ethereal quality in his gaze. Father, the boy whispered. His voice was barely audible, but there was something about the way he spoke that made Bella's heart ache. Allaric turned to face his son, his expression softening. Yes, my son, he asked, his voice gentle. The boy took a hesitant step forward, his eyes flicking toward Bella before returning to his father. I'm feeling better, the boy said, his voice a little stronger than before. Bella watched in shock as the boy's once pale face seemed to flush with color. His shoulders, which had been slumped in weakness, straightened slightly. Allaric's gaze softened even more, and for the first time, Bella saw a flicker of something like warmth in his eyes. Thank you, Allaric whispered to Bella, his voice so quiet that only she could hear. You may have saved my son's life. Bella stood frozen, unsure of what to say. The weight of his words hung heavily in the air, and as much as she wanted to deny it, she could feel a strange pull between them. She had no idea what was happening, but something told her that her life was about to take an unexpected turn. The days following that night at Bella's bistro were strange, to say the least. Bella tried to shake off the feeling that something was shifting in her life, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't ignore the growing tension. She had only done a simple thing, given some leftovers to a quiet, lonely child, and yet, it felt like she had stepped into a much bigger story than she could have ever imagined. Allaric and his son disappeared as quickly as they had appeared, leaving her with more questions than answers. She couldn't forget the look in Allaric's eyes, or the strange transformation in the boy's face as he seemed to regain some color, some life after she had fed him. Bella tried to go back to her routine, working long hours at the restaurant and trying not to think too much about what had happened. But that wasn't easy, especially when she kept seeing the boy's face in her mind. Then, on the third day after the incident, Bella received an unexpected visit. She had just finished her shift when the restaurant's back door swung open, and there he was, Allaric. This time, he wasn't alone. The boy, his son, was beside him, looking a little more alive than she had remembered. His skin no longer had the sickly pale hue from before, and there was a spark in his eyes. He looked like any other child now, not the fragile, almost ghostly figure she had seen just days ago. Bella, Allaric's voice was calm, commanding, yet still softer than it had been before. He looked at her like she was the most important person in the room, even though she was just a simple waitress. I need to speak with you. Bella stood frozen for a moment, not sure if she should invite them in or not. Allaric was clearly someone who didn't belong in a place like hers. But she couldn't refuse him, not after what had happened. Sure, Bella said, her voice barely a whisper. Come in. The two of them entered the small staff room where she sometimes took her breaks. Allaric closed the door behind him and turned to face her. His son stayed quiet, standing a little to the side, as if waiting for something. Bella couldn't help but feel a little nervous. I'm sure you have many questions, Allaric began, his eyes never leaving hers. And I understand your confusion. This is not something that happens every day. Bella nodded, unsure of how to respond. She had a million questions, but none of them seemed to make sense in this moment. All she could think about was the boy who had somehow changed before her very eyes. I didn't mean to cause any trouble, she said finally, her voice shaky. I only gave him food. And that was more than anyone else has done for him in years, Allaric said, his tone filled with something Bella couldn't quite read. He looked down at his son, who was still standing quietly, staring at Bella with an intensity that made her feel exposed. You see, my son, Allaric continued, has been cursed for as long as he can remember. He has never been able to live a normal life, and no one has been able to help him. Bella's breath caught in her throat. Cursed? What kind of curse could make a child so sick, so lifeless? But you, Allaric went on. You were able to do what no one else could. By giving him that food, you unknowingly broke a barrier. His health is improving, and it's because of you. Bella shook her head in disbelief. I don't understand. How could giving him food do that? That's the thing, Allaric said with a slight smile. I don't understand it either. But somehow, your kindness has triggered something inside him. Something that hasn't been awakened in years. He paused for a moment, his gaze lingering on her. I know you must be wondering why I'm telling you all of this, why I'm here. The truth is, Bella, you have something special about you. Something I can't quite explain, but it's there. Bella took a step back, trying to process what he was saying. She was just a waitress, a simple woman trying to make ends meet. She didn't have anything special, did she? I don't understand, she whispered. I'm just a regular person. I don't have any magic or powers. No, Allaric agreed, you don't. But there's something about your heart, your actions that speak louder than any magic could. You've done something for my son that no one else has been able to do, and for that, I owe you. Bella felt her chest tighten. There was something about Allaric's presence that made her feel like she was standing on the edge of something much bigger than herself. I don't want anything from you, she said quickly, trying to push away the overwhelming sense of responsibility she was feeling. I just want to help him, that's all. You already have, Allaric replied, his voice softening. But I think we need you to do more. Bella's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? I want you to stay with us, Allaric said. I want you to be a part of my son's life. I want you to help him, and help me understand why you were able to do something no one else could. Bella felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just about leftovers anymore. This was about something much deeper, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. I don't know if I can do that, she whispered, looking at the boy who was still standing silently by his father's side. You already have, Allaric said again, a slight smile curling at the corners of his mouth. You've already done more than you know. The weight of his words hung heavily in the air, and Bella realized, with a sinking feeling in her stomach, that her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. The next few days felt like a dream to Bella. She couldn't explain why, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw the boy, the son of the mysterious man who called himself Allaric. He had become the center of her thoughts, and not just because of his strange ailment. The way he had looked at her that night, the way he seemed to come alive after she had given him her leftovers, it was as if she had awakened something deep within him. Allaric's words echoed in her mind. You've done more than you know. The more she thought about it, the more it all seemed surreal. How could a simple act of kindness have caused such a change? Bella didn't believe in magic or curses, but everything about this situation was pushing her to question what she had always known. Allaric had invited her to stay with them, to help his son, but Bella hesitated. She wasn't sure she was ready for whatever it was they were offering. It felt like a life-changing decision, one that would lead her down a path she couldn't foresee. But then again, what choice did she have? The pull she felt toward this family, toward the boy, was undeniable. And so, with a mixture of fear and curiosity, she agreed. Allaric arranged for her to stay in a guest room in his mansion, a place far grander than anything Bella had ever seen. The marble floors, the grand chandeliers, the soft glow of candlelight, it all made her feel small, like she didn't belong. But she had promised to help, and she couldn't back out now. When she arrived at the mansion, she was led through long, dimly lit corridors until they reached a large, comfortable room with views of the vast gardens outside. Allaric left her there with a quiet word of reassurance before disappearing into the hall. She stood by the window for a long time, staring out at the sprawling grounds. There was something both peaceful and unsettling about the place. As she turned to unpack her things, a soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find the boy standing there. His dark eyes met hers, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. "Hello," Bella said gently. The boy didn't respond, but he stepped inside, his gaze fixed on her. He wasn't as fragile as before. He looked healthier, stronger. Bella felt a strange connection to him, as if she had known him her whole life. "I'm glad you're feeling better," she said, unsure of what else to say. He nodded, but still didn't speak. Bella smiled softly. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to," she said. "I just want to help." The boy studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, finally, he spoke. "I don't understand," he said, his voice quiet, but clearer than it had been before. "Why did you help me?" Bella's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected him to ask that. She didn't have a good answer, not really. "Because you needed it," she said simply, "and I wanted to help." The boy didn't respond right away. Instead, he just looked at her, as if trying to read her. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Bella felt a warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't much, just 2 simple words, but they meant everything. She smiled at him. "You're welcome." After a few moments, the boy turned to leave, but then he paused at the door. "Will you stay?" he asked, his voice hesitant. Bella didn't know how to respond at first. She had come here to help, yes, but she wasn't sure what staying meant. But she couldn't deny the bond that was beginning to form between them. "Yes," she said finally. "I'll stay." The boy nodded and left the room, but Bella could still feel his presence in the air. The house, the mansion, the strange world she had stepped into, it all felt so surreal. She was helping a boy who was no ordinary child. And yet, despite everything, she couldn't help but wonder if she was the one who needed saving. The days that followed were filled with small, quiet moments. Bella spent her time with the boy, learning more about him as they talked, slowly getting to know each other. She discovered that he had lived in the mansion for as long as he could remember, locked away from the world due to his curse. He rarely left his room, and when he did, he kept to the shadows. Bella didn't press him for more details. She could sense that there were parts of his story he wasn't ready to share. But she could see the sadness in his eyes, the longing for something more. As time passed, Bella felt herself becoming more and more connected to the boy. She felt a deep sense of responsibility for him, as if somehow she had been chosen to help him break free from whatever held him captive. But Allaric, the vampire king, remained a mystery to her. He was kind, in his own way, but there was a distance between them that made it hard for Bella to truly understand him. He often disappeared for long stretches, and when he did return, he was always preoccupied with something she didn't know about. Bella couldn't help but feel like she was being kept in the dark. What was Allaric hiding? Why did he want her to stay so badly? And what was the real reason his son's curse had begun to lift? Every day brought more questions, more uncertainty. But Bella was determined to stay. She had already made a promise, and she wasn't about to break it now. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Days passed, and Bella's life in the mansion began to feel like a strange routine. She spent her time with the boy, who was slowly growing stronger every day, and helped him with various activities around the house. His smile, though still rare, became a welcome sight. He had a quiet kindness about him, and Bella felt a growing sense of responsibility for him. Despite the odd circumstances, she started to feel like part of the family, though a part of her remained unsettled. Allaric remained distant, often retreating into the shadows of his own life. He would come to check on his son, of course, but it seemed as though there was something he wasn't telling her. Each time they spoke, there was a certain guardedness in his voice, a certain weight to his words that made Bella wonder what he was hiding. The mansion, for all its beauty and grandeur, had a strange emptiness to it when Allaric was absent. There was always an undercurrent of tension in the air, like something was on the verge of happening, something that Bella couldn't quite put her finger on. One evening, as Bella was sitting by the fire with the boy, she overheard a conversation between Allaric and one of his advisors. She had been sitting in the next room, but the door had been ajar, and their voices carried through the heavy wooden frame. "We cannot keep her here forever." The advisor's voice was low, urgent. "She's too involved now. It's only a matter of time before the others find out." Bella's heart raced. "I don't care," Allaric replied, his voice cold. "She's the only one who has helped him. I'm not sending her away." "But you must understand, my lord," the advisor persisted. "The others will not tolerate her presence. They will demand answers. If she becomes too important, it could endanger us all." "Let them come," Allaric said, his tone unwavering. "I will not let anyone harm her." The conversation faded into silence, but Bella's mind was spinning. What had she just heard? The others? Who were they? And why did Allaric feel the need to protect her so fiercely? As much as she wanted to ignore it, Bella knew she couldn't. She was already in too deep. Her thoughts were interrupted when the boy entered the room, his small face filled with a look of uncertainty. "Bella," he said quietly, his voice soft but tinged with an emotion Bella couldn't quite name. "What's wrong?" Bella asked, her concern rising. He hesitated before speaking. I heard them talking," he said, his eyes avoiding hers. Bella's heart clenched. "Who, sweetheart?" "My father and the man who talks to him. They were saying that you can't stay here forever, that it's dangerous." Bella's breath caught in her throat. She didn't want to lie to him, but she didn't know how much of the truth she could tell. "I'm not going anywhere, okay?" she said, trying to reassure him. "I'm here to help you." He nodded, but Bella could see the worry in his eyes. "But what if something happens?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Bella felt a pang of guilt. "I won't let anything happen to you," she promised, though she wasn't sure how much weight her words carried. The boy stared at her for a moment before finally speaking again. "I don't want to be alone anymore." Bella's heart broke at the vulnerability in his voice. She moved closer, her hand gently resting on his shoulder. "You won't be alone," she said softly. "Not as long as I'm here." She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she couldn't walk away from him now. That night, after the boy had gone to bed, Bella found herself standing in front of the mansion's grand mirror, her reflection staring back at her. She barely recognized the woman she saw. This life, this world, was so different from the one she had known. She had come here to help, but somewhere along the way, she had become a part of something much bigger. And now, with the weight of Allaric's words and the boy's plea heavy on her heart, she realized that she was more deeply involved than she had ever expected. The next day, as Bella walked through the mansion's grand hallways, she was approached by Allaric. His presence was imposing as always, but this time there was something in his eyes, something almost like an apology. "Bella," he said softly, his voice carrying a tone of seriousness she hadn't heard before. "I need you to understand something." Bella met his gaze, waiting for him to continue. "You're not just here to help my son," he said quietly. "You're part of something much larger. Something that involves more than just us." Bella's pulse quickened. "What are you talking about?" Allaric took a step closer, his expression somber. "The curse on my son is only a part of it," he said. "There are forces at work here that go beyond our control. Forces that you can't even begin to understand." Bella felt a chill run down her spine. "What does that mean for me?" "It means," Allaric said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "that your place here isn't just a matter of kindness anymore. You've been chosen for a reason, Bella, and I can't let you leave until we find out why." Bella's mind raced. She had been chosen? Chosen for what? She opened her mouth to ask, but before she could speak, Allaric turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing through the cold halls. Bella was left standing there, her heart racing and her mind spinning with the new, frightening possibilities. Her life, her very future, was no longer in her control, and there was no turning back. The following days were filled with an uneasy tension, as Bella's mind raced with Allaric's words. She had been chosen, but for what? What did it mean for her to be a part of this strange, mysterious world? Each day that passed, she found herself growing more connected to the boy, and to Allaric, though she couldn't explain why. There was something about him, something almost magnetic, that made it impossible for her to stay away. But at the same time, there was an underlying fear, a nagging doubt that whispered in the back of her mind. What if she was in over her head? What if she had gotten herself entangled in something she didn't understand? The mansion, with its cold stone walls and expansive halls, seemed to grow quieter the longer she stayed. It was as if the very air held its breath, waiting for something to happen. Bella spent her days in the company of the boy, helping him with tasks, listening to him talk about his past, though he still spoke little about the curse that had haunted him for so long. He seemed to trust her, and in turn, she grew to care for him in a way she hadn't expected. But as much as she tried to stay focused on helping him, her thoughts kept drifting back to Allaric. One evening, after dinner, Bella found herself standing by the window, staring out at the darkening sky. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, but the silence in the mansion was deafening. She could feel it. Something was coming, something big. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. She turned to see Allaric standing there, his expression as unreadable as always. "We need to talk," he said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that made her heart skip a beat. Bella nodded and stepped aside, letting him enter. The room was warm from the fire, but she couldn't shake the chill that had settled in her bones. "What's going on, Allaric?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. "What do you mean by all of this? Why me? Why did you bring me here?" Allaric sighed and ran a hand through his dark hair, his eyes not meeting hers. "I didn't want to involve you in this," he said, his voice low. "But I had no choice. The curse on my son is tied to something much bigger than we realized. And now that you're here, I can't just let you go." Bella's heart raced. "You're saying this is all my fault?" "No," Allaric said quickly, shaking his head. "It's not your fault. But there's something about you, Bella. Something that I can't explain, but I feel it too. I know you're the key to helping him." Bella's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean? What am I supposed to do?" Allaric stepped closer, his gaze intense. "The curse on my son is tied to an ancient pact, one that goes back centuries. And you," he said, his voice steady but filled with something Bella couldn't quite place. "You have a connection to it. A connection that we can't ignore." Bella's mind spun. How? How can I possibly have anything to do with this? Allaric looked at her, his expression softening for the first time since they had met. "I don't know, Bella, but I can feel it. There's something about you, something that's been calling to me since you walked into this house." Bella took a step back, her mind racing. This was too much. She had come here to help a boy, not get caught up in some ancient curse. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered. "I don't understand any of it." Allaric reached out, gently touching her arm, his eyes filled with something that almost looked like desperation. "You don't have to understand it yet," he said softly. "But I need you to trust me. We can't do this alone. We need you." Bella swallowed hard, her throat dry. She had been trying to stay out of this, trying to stay in control of her life. But now, it felt like there was no way out. She wasn't sure if she was ready for what Allaric was asking, but she knew one thing. She couldn't walk away from him. "Okay," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll stay, but I need to know more. I can't help you if I don't understand what's happening." Allaric nodded, his expression serious. "I'll tell you everything, Bella, but you have to promise me something." "What?" Bella asked, confused. "You have to promise that you won't run, no matter what happens." Bella hesitated, the weight of his words settling in her chest. "I promise," she said quietly. Allaric seemed to relax, though the tension in his body was still evident. "Thank you," he said. "I don't know what will happen next, but together, we can break the curse. Together, we can save my son." Bella nodded, though doubt still lingered in the pit of her stomach. The path ahead was uncertain, but she had already made her choice. There was no turning back now. The next few days passed in a haze for Bella. She found herself going through the motions, helping the boy, whose name she learned was Adrien, with his daily activities. His health had improved remarkably since she'd given him the leftovers. And though he was still quiet, there was a spark in his eyes now that had been missing before. His smile, though rare, was enough to fill Bella's heart with warmth, and she began to look forward to their time together. But despite her growing connection with Adrien, the air in the mansion still felt heavy, filled with unspoken questions. Every time she looked at Allaric, she felt as though there was something more he wasn't telling her. Something deeper. One evening, as the sun set behind the castle's towering spires, Bella found herself sitting alone in one of the mansion's many sitting rooms. The fire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows across the room. She had been thinking about Allaric's words again, about the curse, about the connection he believed she had to his son, and most of all, about what it all meant for her. She had promised him she would stay, but the weight of it was starting to feel suffocating. The door creaked open, and Bella looked up to see Allaric standing in the doorway. His dark eyes locked with hers, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them felt thick, charged with unspoken tension. "Can we talk?" Allaric's voice was softer than usual, almost hesitant. Bella nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. "Of course." She rose from her seat, unsure of what to expect. Allaric stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a quiet click. He seemed different tonight, more serious, almost weighed down by something. "I wanted to explain more about what's happening," Allaric said, his voice low. "About the curse, and about why you're here." Bella's breath caught in her throat. "You don't have to explain," she said quickly, her hands wringing in front of her. "I'm here to help Adrien. That's all." "No," Allaric said firmly, taking a step closer. "You need to understand what you're getting into." Bella's pulse quickened, but she held his gaze. "I want to understand," she said, her voice steady. "I need to know what's going on, Allaric." He nodded slowly, running a hand through his dark hair. "The curse on Adrien goes back centuries. It's not just a sickness, Bella. It's part of an ancient pact, one that binds him to a much darker force than you can imagine. My family, we've been bound by this curse for generations." Bella felt a chill run down her spine, but she didn't look away. "And what does this have to do with me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Allaric looked at her, his gaze intense. "You're part of the key, Bella. Your blood, your very presence here. It's the reason Adrien's curse is weakening. I don't know why, but it's happening." Bella's mind raced. "But I'm just a waitress. How could I possibly be connected to this?" Allaric stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I don't know," he said quietly, "but I can feel it. You're connected to the curse in ways we don't fully understand. And that connection is what's giving us a chance to break it." Bella felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "I don't understand," she repeated, her voice trembling. "What am I supposed to do? How can I help?" Allaric placed a hand gently on her shoulder, his touch sending a strange warmth through her. "You've already helped more than you know," he said softly. "But there's more to be done. We need to find the source of the curse and destroy it. Together." Bella looked at him, her heart pounding in her chest. She had promised to stay, but now she was faced with a choice that she hadn't expected. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't know what's happening." "You are stronger than you think," Allaric said, his voice filled with certainty. "I can feel it in you. You have the strength to help Adrien. You have the power to break this curse." Bella shook her head, feeling overwhelmed. "I can't do this alone. I don't even understand what I'm supposed to do." Allaric's expression softened. "You won't be alone, Bella. I'll be with you every step of the way. We'll do this together." Bella's heart ached at the sincerity in his words. She had come here to help, but now it seemed like she had been drawn into something far bigger than she could have ever imagined. "I don't know what will happen," she said quietly, "but I'll stay. I'll help." Allaric smiled, a rare, genuine smile that made something stir in Bella's chest. "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "You don't know what this means to me. To us." He stepped back, his gaze lingering on her for a moment before he turned to leave. "Get some rest," he said over his shoulder. "Tomorrow we begin." As the door closed behind him, Bella was left standing there, her heart racing. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing. There was no turning back now. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was finally part of something that mattered. The next morning, Bella awoke to the sound of the wind howling outside the mansion, a a constant reminder of the storm that had been raging for days. Despite the eerie weather, she had a strange sense of calm about her, as though she had finally made the decision that would set everything in motion. She couldn't deny that the life she had known was slipping away with every passing moment, but there was a part of her that welcomed the change. The boy, Adrien, was still asleep in his room when Bella went to check on him. He had come a long way in a short amount of time, and it was clear that his health was improving. He looked more like a normal child now, his pale face slowly gaining color, and his once slumped shoulders were beginning to straighten. Bella felt a pang of relief every time she saw him smile, but she knew that there was still a long way to go. She had made a promise to help him, and she intended to keep it. As Bella made her way downstairs, she found Allaric waiting for her in the grand hall. His presence was as commanding as always, and for a moment, she wondered how it was possible for one man to have so much power, so much intensity. He looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and something else, something that made her heart flutter, though she couldn't explain why. "Bella," he said softly, his voice carrying an undercurrent of urgency. "Are you ready?" She nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at her. "I think so." Allaric's expression softened just slightly. "We don't have much time. The curse on Adrien is weakening, but it's not gone yet. There's still one final step we need to take." "What step?" Bella asked, her heart racing. "We need to find the source of the curse," Allaric said, his tone firm. "It's tied to an ancient pact, one that's been passed down through my family for generations. But the curse isn't just about my bloodline. It's about something much darker, something that can only be destroyed if we find it." Bella's pulse quickened. "How do we find it?" "That's the hard part," Allaric said, his jaw tightening. "We have to go to the heart of it, the place where it all began. There's an ancient temple, hidden deep in the forest, where the pact was first forged. It's there that we can break the curse for good." Bella swallowed hard, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. "A temple? And you think we can just go there and break the curse?" "No," Allaric said, shaking his head. "It's not that simple. The temple is protected, and there are forces that don't want us to get close. But if we don't do this, Adrien will never be free." The gravity of his words hung in the air between them. Bella couldn't help but feel like they were stepping into something far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. But there was no turning back now. She had promised to stay, to help, and she wasn't going to back out. "When do we leave?" Bella asked, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside her. "Tonight," Allaric said, his eyes darkening with resolve. "The sooner we act, the better. We can't afford to waste any more time." Bella nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. The moment she had been dreading was finally here, the moment that would determine Adrien's fate. And her own. That evening, as the mansion settled into a quiet stillness, Bella and Allaric prepared to leave. Adrien had been resting, but Allaric insisted that it was time to take action. The boy still didn't understand everything, but he trusted Bella and his father. He knew that they were doing this for him. Bella packed a small bag, feeling the weight of the journey ahead. She wasn't sure what to expect when they reached the temple, but she knew that it was the only way to end this curse once and for all. As the hours passed, the storm outside only grew fiercer, but it felt like the perfect backdrop for what was to come. The world seemed to hold its breath as Bella, Allaric, and Adrien prepared for their journey into the unknown. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, they were ready. Allaric's carriage waited outside the mansion, drawn by a team of dark horses, their eyes gleaming in the dim light. Bella climbed into the carriage, her heart heavy with the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Allaric followed, his face set in grim determination, while Adrien sat silently beside them. As they drove through the night, the landscape outside became increasingly wild and untamed. The trees grew thicker, the wind howled louder, and Bella could feel the weight of ancient magic pressing down on them. It was as if the very land itself was resisting their presence. "We're getting close," Allaric said after a long stretch of silence. "The temple is hidden deep in the forest, but we'll find it." Bella nodded, though a part of her was terrified. She didn't know what would happen when they reached the temple, but she knew that they couldn't turn back. Adrien's future depended on it. As the carriage continued its journey, Bella's thoughts drifted back to the mansion, to the life she had left behind. She had never imagined that her simple act of kindness would lead her here, to the edge of something ancient and powerful. But she had made a choice, and she was going to see it through. For Adrien, for Allaric, and for herself. The storm raged outside as the carriage rattled through the forest, the shadows growing longer and darker with every passing minute. Bella couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, something old and dangerous. And yet, she knew there was no turning back. They had come too far to stop now. The temple awaited. The night was unnaturally quiet as the carriage continued its journey deeper into the forest. The storm had calmed, but a dense fog had settled over the path, enveloping everything in a thick, suffocating haze. Bella sat silently between Allaric and Adrien, her heart pounding in her chest, her thoughts swirling in confusion. Every bump of the carriage on the rough, uneven road seemed to echo in her mind, making her more anxious with each passing moment. Allaric had been quiet for most of the journey, his focus on the path ahead. He was a man of few words, but tonight, something about him felt different. The tension in the air was palpable, and Bella could sense that this was the point of no return. How much further? Bella finally asked, her voice breaking the silence. Allaric didn't answer immediately. He just stared ahead, his expression dark and unreadable. After a long pause, he replied, his voice steady, but with an edge that made Bella's pulse quicken. Not much longer. We'll reach the temple soon. Bella's breath caught in her throat. She had heard the stories, the warnings about the temple, but now that she was this close, they all seemed real. Her mind raced, and she struggled to steady her breathing. She wasn't sure if she was more afraid of the curse or what they would find at the temple, but she couldn't stop now. She had come too far. Adrien, who had been unusually quiet, shifted beside her. Bella turned to look at him, and for the first time since their journey began, he met her gaze. His eyes were different now, no longer filled with fear, but with something else, something darker. She reached out and placed a hand on his, giving him a reassuring smile, but his expression didn't change. Are you okay? She asked softly, her voice gentle. Adrien nodded slowly, though his eyes remained distant. I'm ready, he whispered, as if trying to convince himself as much as Bella. Bella squeezed his hand, feeling the weight of the moment press down on her. The future felt uncertain, and no matter how hard she tried to prepare herself, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The carriage continued its steady progress through the forest, the trees growing denser as they ventured deeper into the heart of the land. The air felt colder now, the stillness thick with an ominous presence. Bella glanced at Allaric again, his face lit by the faint glow of the carriage lamps. What are we going to find there? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Allaric's gaze flickered toward her, his expression hardening. I don't know, but we need to destroy the source of the curse once and for all. If we don't, Adrien will never be free. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with the gravity of their mission. The truth was, Bella wasn't sure what to expect. The stories she had heard about the temple were ancient, filled with darkness and danger, and no one had ever returned from it the same. But there was no turning back now. She had to trust Allaric, trust that this was the right thing to do. We're almost there, Allaric said after a long silence. He reached forward, pulling the reins to slow the carriage. Bella looked out through the fog, straining to see what lay ahead. Slowly, the outline of an ancient structure began to emerge from the mist. The temple was a dark silhouette against the pale moonlight, its towering spires rising like the fingers of a giant reaching toward the sky. Bella felt a chill run through her as they approached. It looked as if it had been abandoned for centuries, its stone walls covered in ivy and moss, as if nature itself had tried to reclaim it. This is it, Allaric said softly, his voice tinged with something like fear. The temple, the heart of the curse. Bella's stomach tightened. They had arrived. The carriage stopped just in front of the temple's massive doors, and for a moment, no one moved. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. Adrien's hand tightened around Bella's, and she could feel the tension radiating from him. Are you sure about this? She asked him, her voice filled with concern. He nodded, but there was a nervousness in his eyes. I have to be. I can't live like this anymore. Bella looked up at the temple, her mind spinning with thoughts of what lay inside. The darkness inside was palpable, and yet, she couldn't help but feel a strange pull toward it, as though it were calling to her. Let's go, Allaric said, his voice firm. He climbed down from the carriage first, then offered his hand to Bella, helping her down. Adrien followed closely behind, his steps slow but determined. As they approached the entrance, Bella's heart began to race. The massive stone doors of the temple loomed before them, ancient symbols carved into the surface, worn by centuries of time. Allaric stepped forward, his hand reaching for the door. "This is it," he said again, more quietly this time. With a deep breath, he pushed the doors open, and they creaked loudly, as if protesting the intrusion. Inside, the air was thick with dust and age, and the light from the torches flickered eerily along the stone walls. The temple's interior was vast, with high ceilings that seemed to stretch endlessly above them. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the chamber as they moved deeper into the heart of the temple. Bella could feel the weight of history in the air, the presence of something ancient and powerful watching them, waiting for them to make their move. As they walked further, the temple seemed to grow colder, the walls closing in around them. Bella's hand instinctively found Adrien's, and she squeezed it tightly. They had come this far, and there was no turning back now. The future of Adrien, and possibly their lives, depended on what they did next. As they ventured deeper into the temple, the atmosphere became heavier, the air colder. Bella could feel the weight of the place pressing down on her. Each step she took felt like it echoed through the centuries, reverberating off the ancient stone walls. The symbols carved into the stone seemed to watch them, their meanings lost to time, but their presence still powerful. Adrien, walking just behind her, remained silent, his grip on her hand tight. Allaric, a few steps ahead, led the way, his posture tense but determined. There was no turning back now. The deep silence that surrounded them was unnerving. Bella's heart pounded in her chest as she glanced around, the darkness threatening to swallow them whole. The torches lining the walls flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. She could almost hear whispers in the wind, soft voices that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. "This way." Allaric's voice cut through the stillness, steady but laced with something Bella couldn't place, perhaps a hint of fear or the weight of centuries of secrets. They followed him as he led them into the heart of the temple, where the air grew colder still. It felt like something was waiting for them, something ancient, something that had been watching and waiting for centuries. The deeper they went, the more Bella felt as though the temple itself was alive, its energy palpable, its presence overwhelming. Finally, they reached the inner chamber. The space was vast, the ceiling so high that it seemed to disappear into the shadows. The walls were covered in intricate carvings, depicting scenes that Bella couldn't quite understand. She tried to focus on them, but something about the imagery felt wrong. Her stomach twisted, and she pulled her gaze away. In the center of the room stood an altar, ancient and covered in dust. It looked like it hadn't been touched in ages. As they approached, the atmosphere seemed to shift. The temperature dropped even further, and Bella could feel a strange pressure in the air, like something was building up, ready to burst. Adrien, standing beside her, seemed to sense it too. He looked up at her, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and something else. "Hope? Is this where it all started?" Bella whispered, her voice barely audible in the stillness. Allaric nodded, his face grim. "Yes, this is the place where the curse was first bound to my family. And this is where it ends." He stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the altar. "We need to destroy the source. Only then will Adrien be free." Bella could feel the weight of his words. She knew that whatever happened here would change everything. Adrien's life, and her own, depended on what they did next. Allaric raised his hand, and the torches around them flared brighter for a moment, casting a harsh light over the chamber. The carvings on the walls seemed to shimmer as though they were alive. "It's here," Allaric said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "The power that binds the curse is in the altar. We need to destroy it." Bella felt a strange energy fill the room, a pull that seemed to come from the altar itself. She stepped forward, her heart racing. She wanted to help, to do something, but she wasn't sure what to do. Allaric stepped to the altar and placed his hands on it, closing his eyes. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, the ground trembled beneath their feet. Bella's breath caught in her throat as the stone altar began to glow with a dark, eerie light. Adrien stepped closer to her, his hand still holding hers tightly. "What's happening?" he asked, his voice trembling. "It's the curse," Allaric said, his voice strained. It's reacting. We need to finish it now. As the light from the altar grew brighter, Bella could feel something stirring deep within her. The energy in the room was becoming overwhelming, pulling at her in a way she couldn't explain. It was as if something inside her was awakening, responding to the ancient power in the room. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. What do we do? She asked, her voice shaky. Allaric's eyes snapped open, his gaze fierce. We need to break the bond. Destroy the altar. Without thinking, Bella stepped forward, reaching out toward the altar. The moment her fingers brushed the surface, the entire room seemed to erupt with energy. The walls shook, the ground trembling beneath her feet as a rush of power surged through her. She gasped, her hand instinctively pulling back, but the energy didn't stop. It swirled around her, pulling her in. Adrien stepped closer, his voice filled with fear. Bella, he cried out, but she couldn't respond. The energy was too powerful, overwhelming her senses. Allaric rushed to her side, his face pale. Hold on, he said, gripping her arm tightly. You're the key, Bella. You have to finish it. Bella's mind raced. She didn't know how, didn't know what to do, but she could feel the connection. Her blood, her presence, was what was needed to destroy the curse. With a deep breath, she steadied herself and placed both hands on the altar, feeling the raw power coursing through her. She could feel it, the dark force that had bound Adrien to this curse for so long. It was inside her now, its presence suffocating, but Bella knew she had to face it. She had to fight it. She closed her eyes, gathering every ounce of strength within her. I break this bond, she whispered, the words almost a prayer. And with that, a shock wave of energy shot out from the altar, blasting through the room with a force that knocked Bella and Adrien back. For a moment, everything went black. The world around Bella went completely dark. The energy from the altar had knocked her back, her body crashing against the cold, hard stone floor. Her ears rang, her vision blurred, and for a moment, she couldn't tell if she was still in the temple or if she had been thrown into another realm altogether. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, and she struggled to draw in a breath. Her mind was racing, her heart pounding in her chest. What had happened? Had she succeeded? Was the curse broken? Slowly, Bella pushed herself up, her hands shaking as they touched the ground. She could hear Adrien's voice calling her name, frantic and filled with worry. Bella, are you okay? His voice cut through the fog in her mind, grounding her in the present. She blinked, her vision starting to clear. Allaric was standing nearby, his face tense, his eyes darting between Bella and Adrien. Bella, talk to me. Adrien's voice grew louder, filled with panic. Bella finally managed to sit up, her body sore but alive. She looked around, trying to make sense of what was happening. The room was still filled with a strange energy, but there was no longer the suffocating darkness that had overwhelmed her moments before. It was as if the curse itself had been disturbed, but not completely erased. She met Adrien's gaze. His face was filled with worry, but there was something else in his eyes, something lighter, a glimmer of hope. I'm okay, Bella whispered, her voice hoarse. I think we did it. Allaric stepped forward, his eyes intense. Not yet, he said, his voice low. It's not over. We have to finish this. We've broken the bond, but there's more to do. Bella's mind raced. What more could there be to do? Hadn't she just broken the curse? She stood shakily, her legs unsteady, but she refused to let the doubt creep in. They had come so far, and there was no turning back now. What do we need to do? Bella asked, her voice firm despite the confusion swirling inside her. Allaric looked at her, his gaze softening. The bond may have been broken, but the source of the curse is still out there. We need to destroy the heart of it, the magic that sustains the curse. Only then can we make sure it never comes back. Bella felt a chill run down her spine. The heart of the curse. It sounded like something out of a nightmare, but she had no choice but to trust Allaric. She nodded, taking a deep breath. Let's do it. They moved through the temple, the air growing colder as they approached the deepest part of the chamber. The walls around them seemed to close in, the darkness pressing against them, but Allaric led the way without hesitation. His steps were confident, and Bella could feel the urgency in the air. They reached a narrow passage at the back of the temple, hidden behind a set of ancient stone doors that seemed to have been waiting for them. The door creaked as Allaric pushed it open, revealing a room unlike any Bella had seen before. It was a circular chamber, its floor covered in strange symbols, their edges glowing faintly with a dark light. In the center of the room stood a stone pedestal, an ancient crystal resting atop it. The crystal glowed, with an eerie blue light, pulsating in rhythm with Bella's heart. It felt alive, as though it were feeding on the energy around it. Bella felt a shiver crawl up her spine as she stepped closer to the pedestal. "What is this?" she whispered. Allaric's voice was low, his tone heavy with the weight of history. "This is the heart of the curse. This is what binds us all. The pact was forged through this crystal. And now, we need to destroy it." Bella swallowed hard. "How?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "We destroy it with the same energy that broke the bond," Allaric said. "But we need your help, Bella. The power you tapped into earlier, your connection to the curse, it's the key to finishing this. You can do this." Bella felt the weight of his words. The power inside her, the one she had felt coursing through her when she touched the altar, was still there, faint but pulsing, waiting for her to embrace it. She took a deep breath, closing her eyes. She could feel it, the connection, the energy, the pull of the curse. It was still there, but weaker now. Bella opened her eyes and stepped closer to the crystal, reaching out with both hands. As her fingers brushed against the cool surface of the crystal, a surge of energy coursed through her, stronger than anything she had felt before. The room seemed to vibrate with power, the symbols on the floor glowing brighter as the energy built. Bella could feel her heart racing in sync with the rhythm of the crystal's pulse. She could hear Adrien's voice calling to her, but it was distant, muffled by the overwhelming force surrounding her. Allaric stood nearby, watching her with a mixture of hope and fear in his eyes. "Focus, Bella," he urged. "You can do this." Bella nodded, her hands steady now, her mind clear. She focused on the crystal, on the dark energy that had been feeding on Adrien for so long. This was it, the final step. With a deep breath, she reached inside herself, tapping into the power that had awakened within her. She could feel it rising, filling her, ready to be unleashed. And then, with all the strength she could muster, she released it. The energy burst forth from her, surging through the crystal, and the room erupted in light. Bella felt herself being pulled into the energy, her body overwhelmed by the force of it, but she didn't let go. The light grew brighter, blinding, and for a moment, Bella thought she might lose herself in it. But then, just as suddenly as it had started, the light vanished. The room was silent. Bella blinked, disoriented, her heart pounding. She looked around, half expecting the darkness to return, but it was gone. The crystal on the pedestal was no longer glowing. It had been shattered, its power broken. Bella let out a shaky breath, her body trembling with the aftermath of the magic. "It's done," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Allaric stepped forward, his face a mixture of relief and awe. "You did it," he said, his voice full of wonder. Bella turned to look at Adrien, who was standing a few feet away, his eyes wide with amazement. The curse had been broken. The magic had been destroyed. They were free. The aftermath of the battle in the temple left the air still and heavy. The once oppressive darkness had lifted, leaving the room filled with an eerie quiet, but a sense of peace slowly began to settle over Bella. She stood there, catching her breath, her hands still tingling with the magic that had surged through her only moments ago. The crackling energy that had filled the room was now gone, leaving only the remnants of broken power. Bella looked around at the shattered remnants of the crystal, the heart of the curse, now nothing more than a pile of dust and fragments. It was over. The curse had been broken. For a long moment, no one moved. Bella's heart still pounded in her chest, and the adrenaline was starting to wear off, leaving her feeling drained. But then she heard the soft, cautious steps behind her. She turned to see Adrien, his eyes wide with awe and disbelief, slowly approaching. The fear that had once been so evident in his eyes was gone, replaced by something else, a new sense of hope, of freedom. "Is it over?" Adrien asked softly, his voice trembling with emotion. Bella nodded, offering him a tired but relieved smile. "It's over," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Adrien looked around, as though trying to understand the change, but then he turned back to her. "I don't feel trapped anymore," he said, his voice full of Wonder. I feel like myself again. Bella's heart swelled with emotion at his words. She had done it. They had done it. Adrien was free. But as she looked at him, she knew that the journey wasn't over yet. This was only the beginning of a new chapter for all of them. Allaric, who had been silently observing, finally stepped forward. His gaze was soft, filled with gratitude, but also something deeper, something that Bella couldn't quite place. You did it, he said, his voice filled with awe. I never imagined we would get here. Bella smiled at him, but the exhaustion she felt began to weigh on her. It was a team effort, she said, her voice quiet but steady. We're in this together. Allaric's eyes softened, and for the first time, there was a flicker of something personal in his gaze. You've changed everything, he said, his voice low. Bella looked at him, searching his face for the meaning behind his words. She had noticed the subtle shift in their dynamic. There was something deeper between them now, something unspoken. I'm just glad I could help, Bella replied, though her heart was racing. She couldn't deny the connection she felt with him, the pull between them that had grown stronger ever since they had first met. Allaric looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stepped closer, his voice quiet but urgent. You don't understand, Bella, he said, his eyes locking with hers. You've given us more than just freedom from the curse. You've given us hope, and I can't thank you enough. Bella felt a lump form in her throat at his words. She had come here to help, but she had never imagined it would lead to this. I didn't do it for thanks, she said, her voice shaking with emotion. I did it because I believe in you. Both of you. The words hung in the air between them, filled with a deep, unspoken understanding. For a moment, it was just the three of them, Bella, Adrien, and Allaric, standing in the heart of the ancient temple, surrounded by the remnants of an old magic. But that moment didn't last long. The silence was broken by the distant sound of rumbling, like thunder in the distance. Bella's heart skipped a beat as she turned toward the source of the noise. What is that? She asked, her voice tense with worry. Allaric's face darkened as he looked toward the entrance of the temple. It's not over, he said, his voice filled with urgency. There are still forces out there that want to keep the curse alive. We've only just begun to fight. Bella felt a chill run down her spine. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. What do we do now? She asked, her voice shaky but determined. We need to leave, Allaric said, his eyes narrowing. The temple is only the beginning. There's more at stake here than we realize. We need to make sure the curse doesn't return, and we need to protect Adrien. Adrien, still standing next to Bella, looked up at his father with a new sense of understanding. I'm not afraid anymore, he said quietly, his voice filled with newfound strength. We've come this far together. We can do anything. Bella smiled at him, her heart swelling with pride. He was no longer the fragile boy he had been when they first met. He had grown stronger, braver, and now, they had to face the future together. Allaric nodded, his expression resolute. We leave now before it's too late. We must find the others who will help us ensure the curse is destroyed for good. As they made their way out of the temple, the air outside felt different. The storm had finally passed, and the sky was clear, though the weight of what lay ahead still hung over them. Bella glanced at Adrien and Allaric, her heart filled with both fear and hope. They had faced the darkness together, but there was more to do. The journey was far from over, but at least now, they were no longer fighting alone. As the days passed, the world outside the temple seemed to shift. The dark forces that had once held Adrien captive were still out there, but their grip on him had been weakened. The bond that had once chained him, body and soul, was broken. Bella could feel the change in him. He was stronger, more at peace, though there was still a weight on his heart, something he hadn't shared yet. She could see it in his eyes, the questions he still had, the fear of what might come next. But there was hope in those eyes now, hope that hadn't been there before. The journey they had taken was far from over, but they had come a long way. They had faced the darkness together and had emerged stronger, not just as individuals, but as a family. Bella looked at Allaric, who had been by her side through it all. She saw the same fatigue in his eyes, the same deep worry that lingered, but there was also a sense of relief. He had trusted her when no one else had. He had allowed her into his world, into his life, and together they had done something impossible. They had broken a curse that had bound his family for generations. As they rode back to the mansion, Bella couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. She had never imagined that her simple act of kindness, giving her leftovers to a quiet boy, would lead her here, to this moment, this family. But it had, and now she couldn't imagine her life without them. The mansion, once a place of uncertainty and fear, now felt like a home. Adrien was finally free, and Allaric, though still a mystery in many ways, was more than just the vampire king. He was someone she could trust, someone she had come to care for in ways she hadn't expected. The journey had been long, and it had tested them all in ways they hadn't anticipated. But now, standing in the doorway of the mansion, Bella realized that it was just the beginning. The world was still full of uncertainties, still filled with forces that would try to pull them apart. But she had found something here, something worth fighting for. As they entered the mansion, Adrien walked ahead, his steps light, his posture straighter than it had been in weeks. Bella followed him, smiling to herself. He had come so far. Allaric, walking beside her, caught her smile and smiled back, though it was brief, almost as if he didn't quite know how to express the gratitude he felt. But she could see it in his eyes, the silent promise that he would protect them, that they would face whatever came next together. "We've done it," Bella said quietly, more to herself than to anyone else. "Yes, we have," Allaric replied, his voice soft, but filled with something new, something warm. "But it's not over. There will be challenges ahead, but we're stronger now. We've faced the darkness. And we've come out the other side." Bella nodded, looking at Adrien, who had stopped in front of the large fireplace. He turned back to her, a look of quiet determination on his face. "I'm not afraid anymore," he said softly. Bella felt her heart swell with pride for the boy who had once been so lost, so broken. He had found his strength, and so had she. "Neither am I," Bella said, her voice steady. She turned to Allaric, who met her gaze. "We're in this together." Allaric's eyes softened, a hint of something more there, something that Bella couldn't quite name. "Yes," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Together." The fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm glow over the room, and for the first time in a long while, Bella felt at peace. The storm had passed. They had broken the curse, and the future was uncertain, but for the first time, she felt ready to face whatever it held. As the days turned into weeks, the mansion became a place of healing and rebuilding. Adrien spent more time outside, running through the gardens, laughing with Bella and Allaric, his once dark world now filled with light. The bond they had formed was unbreakable, and though the past still haunted them, they were no longer defined by it. They had created something new, something stronger than the darkness that had once threatened to tear them apart. And so, the story of Bella, Adrien, and Allaric didn't end with the breaking of a curse. It was only the beginning. They had faced the impossible and come out stronger for it. But their journey was far from over. The future would bring new challenges, new forces to confront, but as long as they were together, they knew they could face anything. The past had shaped them, but it was the love, trust, and courage they had found in each other that would carry them forward into the unknown.